Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith,
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
and we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 93093 for November 22nd, 2021. Apple announces their self-service repair. Woohoo! But each week, Augusto Pinaud and I review and discuss the productivity and technology news headlines of the week. And we usually start that off with the articles we find in the personal productivity kind of blogosphere and audiosphere, those that are out in blogs and podcasts and elsewhere. And so, Augusto, let's take it off with our headlines of the week in our productivity article section.
So the first one is one that we're going to see for 6 weeks. It's a series of articles that Crush Genie is doing. And the first one, or the series is called The Wandering Mind. And the first one is, what is the Wandering Mind? But I want to cover the 6 articles. I obviously don't know what it's going to be, but I've been reading Crush for a while. And the first one talks about the struggles of those who have the wandering minds, and how we try to explain that, and those who may or may not suffer from ADD and anxiety and sleep deprivation, among other possibilities, and how we deal with all that inner distraction and inner sabotage. There is people who enjoy this laser focus and they can sit and focus on something and work, and there are other of us who suffer for that shiny object syndrome. We are in here and then, oh, it's shiny, and you have not focused on that shiny before the next shiny comes. And the article, I want to open and I want to be here, but Kriyosh is a doctor, so he's going to dissect this from both perspectives: the productive that he's been writing for years, as well as the medicine. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I wanted to introduce this series. So the first article is here. Next week I will bring the next one, and so forth until we cover the whole series.
That's fantastic. It'll be interesting to see what he has to say about this. I think that there are kind of interesting pieces here, right? There's like the fact of the matter, which is that the default mode network, what we typically call mind wandering, is actually a really productive component of our psyche. At the same time, if it's overactive, if it takes up too much of our time, then we ultimately feel unproductive. And then there are, of course, those of us who are maybe neurodiverse, and we have particular issues that cause us to be, cause us to lack focus, and that causes us problems as well. And so I'll be curious to see what Koresh talks about in the series of articles. So onward to our next article.
Our next article is from Rescue Time blog, and you are not supposed to be good at focusing out of the gate. And I was one of those. I was productive, but I was completely unfocused, and it took me years to corral that thing and to get better. And I really enjoy the article. It gives you tips. Hey, try this. The reality is most people, probably be quick to say they don't focus well. Okay, well, what can you do to improve? How to create structures or systems? Also, obviously reap the benefit when you discover those bonus, then those pocket of focus. Then what is going to be? Focus is calm, it's peace, and the last part of the article talk about what they describe the laser focus brain. But what I
Laser
really
brain.
enjoy, laser brain, sorry, what I said, laser focus brain, I apologize. But what I really enjoy about the article was the fact that Rescue Time is bringing to, don't think because you don't have it, you cannot build it. Just start little by little. Recently, um, I was sharing that I don't check email on my phone or my iPad. I have saying that for many, many years. I have an iPad mini, I have an iPhone, and I don't check emails on purpose on those. Email is checked on the iPad Pro. And why? Well, because my goal is to try to increase that focus. When I had it available everywhere, I didn't check anywhere. And I was just opening here and opening there and open anywhere, but really not accomplishing. And so it remember that focus is a muscle. It's a muscle that you can conscious develop to really get good at it.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think this is one of those cases where, when I talk about productivity and one of the fundamental, pillars, if you want to call it that, of productivity is focus. And there is goal orientation, one level of focus, and then there's mental focus. And
Mhm.
this is what this article is really talking about. And you need to start small. It's just kind of like, do you run a marathon? On your first time out on the road? No. As a runner, I know that when I start training for a marathon, I start out with a short series of miles and then I build and build and build. And it's the same thing with regard to your focus. You don't start off being able to have laser brain right out the gate. You have to actually work up to it. And so I appreciate the article for the refresher on the fact that we need to be somewhat kind to ourselves, using your terms, Augusto, in terms of being able to remember that you start off small, and it's through these small incremental gains that you actually ultimately gain really great, dramatic gains over the long term. On
Yeah,
to some,
that's really, really important.
on to some Carl Pauline.
So, sorry, okay. A to-do list won't help you master your life, and cannot agree more than this. So he goes, your to-do list need to be really focused on you and how careful you need to be, not to turn your productivity into a check thing for work, for family. It doesn't matter what do you want to go. And when I work with people as a coach, that's the first thing we define, what I call the where. What are those three things at your personal level? What are those three things at your professional career level that are going to guide those to-do lists? And then we work into 13 categories, your personal, your learns and grows, your emotions, your spiritual, your family, your career, and then finally the lifestyle that you want to have. Because if you just do the checklist will never contain those interesting things. It will have, the things, send the email, respond the phone, pay the bill. But if you don't consciously work into those projects, those actions to accomplish those important projects, made it to the to-do list, what you end up having is you get really good at mark things out of a list, but not really good at master your life.
Yeah, I think to-do lists are a tool, and just
They are.
like any other tool, they can be a good tool or they can be a bad tool. And in the case of a to-do list, it ends up being a vessel, right? So if you put really good things inside that vessel, you can have something really high quality. If you put really poor things into that vessel, it can have very low quality. And your values need to be represented in your to-do list. And that's what I really try to do each week when I do my weekly review in that GTD process. I'm really looking at my to-do list and saying, okay, is this representing my values? Is this doing the things that I feel like at the end of the next week I'm going to feel like, oh, these are the things that I wanted to do because I know that they speak toward my values, right? And my values might be being a good brother, it might be being a good, business owner. It could be any number of different things, just a good human, in my charitable work. And so it's just making sure that the to-do list has meaning built into it, and that is feeding you in some way, shape, or form. Because ultimately, why do all of this stuff if it doesn't really make sense for you? And I think that was kind of the underarching message, or the overarching message, that Carl was kind of hinting at here, well, quoting Anthony Robbins. So, all right, on to our next
Our
story this
last
week.
one came from A Life of Productivity. Don't forget the basics of productivity. And I laugh when I saw that coming into the feed because it's something that I personally has been discussing with somebody. And I've been saying, hey, things on my world changed to the point to certain things got broken. Okay, and that's great because that means you're growing and the current system doesn't work for you anymore. Okay, that happens, has happened before, and it's a great thing. But When that happen, what do? You add more hacks, or you go into the basics of productivity. And in this particular case, Chris Bailey is talking about, okay, he's in the middle of a caffeine reset. Why? He wants to make sure that the caffeine level stay effective for him, so he don't grow tolerance. So every once in a while he has stopped drinking coffee for a couple of weeks. But he goes into more into what are those tasks, what are, what is normal to have low energy, what you can do to deal with that low energy, because not every hack will really give you a gain, and that you need to be aware. Some hacks are great, but you cannot hack your way into the basics of productivity. The basics, if your basics are not solid, all the hacks in the world will not take you anywhere.
That's kind of what I talk about when I talk about fitness, right? You need to be fit in the 7 or so categories in terms of life domains. Typically, they're biological fitnesses, but there are other fitnesses as well. And if you don't have nutrition under your belt, if you don't have the proper rest, if you don't have the proper physical, mental, and emotional fitnesses under wraps, you're ultimately going to break down in terms of either burnout or not being capable of going through the process of getting what you need to get done. The proper inputs are necessary in order to have the proper outputs, not to make humans so machine-like. And I don't like to use the analogy of a machine, but we do need the right inputs in order to have the right outputs. And if we're not doing that in all of those regards, then we're going to have some level imbalance and we're ultimately going to break down. So I think it's always a good reminder for us to take this time, especially as we're coming up upon the various holidays seasons. We have Thanksgiving coming, and then we have the winter holiday seasons and the new year right around the corner. I can't believe it, but here we are. And we need to be mindful of the fact that this is a time for rest and renewal, rejuvenation. This is the time to really think through, how do you want to close out your year, and how do you want to start your new year fresh and paving the way toward a more productive 2022 than 2021, if that's what your real goal is. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how others do that in their own way, right? And I think that's really, really positive. So with that, we have reached our not quite our halfway point, but we've reached the end of our productivity articles of the week. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a break for a word from our sponsor, and we'll come back with our tech articles, our productivity resources of the week, and we'll cover our featured story this week, and we'll see you after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating, and there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith, joined with Augusto Pinaud for the second half of our show. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hop into our productivity articles of the week for the technology portion of the show. Augusto, what's our first tech article this
Google
week?
Meet is raising his participant limits to 500 people. And I think that is exciting. I hope the next thing is that you can manage, so you can mute everybody and manage that everybody, because that will bring really a fair competition to Zoom, who is being able to do this and being able to manage this when you want to do an event or a presentation to that number of people. The article we pulled was from Android police, and they're saying it's insane. And saying no, it's not. If you want to present to that amount of people, you just need to be able to have the tools to manage that, or to bring somebody who can help you and manage that. But again, you will be able to have up to 500 participants in the enterprise standard, enterprise plus, and education plus, and then 250 for enterprise customers. And the availability start last Friday for most people. But I think this is great. And the fact that Google and others are really getting this, so people understand this is going to be the communication going, and regardless of people trying to say, oh, we're going to come back to the building and we're going to come back to the office. Well, we may be, but this is still going to be the main way of communication. Flexibility and flexible work and partial work is here to stay. So the fact that we are increasing this and allowing this and making this easier for companies, I think is awesome.
Yeah, I think this is a great addition to the Google Workspace Business Plus plan for those who are on it, and obviously it extends to Enterprise Standard, Enterprise Plus, and Education Plus folks. Those who are on the Business Starter and the Business Standard plans, this is not the case, and you're still at the 100-person level within meetings. But I think that over time, it just makes a lot of sense for us to be able to handle and use one tool for all of these kinds of communications, that being presentations, meetings, working meetings where you might have a Google Doc up in front of everyone, or Google Slides document up in front of everyone, and being able to work on it. And, being able to have many people do that all at once can be just so much more productive than having a meeting upon a meeting upon a meeting talking about a document that's been exchanged back and forth. So I like the addition of the more people, and I think that's just going to be a good thing all around. All right, moving along to our next story. I thought this was really funny.
Alphabet is bringing Rosie to the office. Well, that's not the article. The article is really Alphabet is putting its prototype robot to cleaning around Google Office. And basically, Alphabet, that is Google's parent company, it's starting to bring, an experimental, or they announced an experimental everyday robot project, and they're testing it in their office. It's a robot that can go around and clean tables and stuff. So we may be closer to Rosie. And for the people who grow up watching Rosie and is still dreaming about having their own Rosie, we may be close. We may be close.
For those of you who are unaware, that's a Jetsons reference.
I'm not that old. Come on.
I'm not saying you're old, but there are probably some people who just don't know it. So I'm just giving them a clue in. But I think this is really fascinating because Google or Alphabet is really working to bring what is, something we can all really use more of, which is time, through the use of, automation. And so these robots are capable of doing things that are, mundane and repetitive tasks, and potentially that will save us time, especially in a corporate environment where you might have a lot of space to clean, and there's still going to be a need for cleaners. I don't think this is going to necessarily replace cleaners in the near term, but the idea of the everyday robot, someone who can go ahead and just do these mundane tasks, is really, I think, a good sign, a sign that we're moving toward and in the right direction regarding what robots should really be doing, right? Like, we tend to keep thinking about machine learning and AI and all of these other things, but the vast majority of what these robots are going to be doing is cleaning off tables and cleaning windows. Like, that is their best use right now, where we are in terms of the infancy of both the web and technology kind of at large. And we need to foster that innovation until, there's really cool stuff like they mentioned in the article. Boston Dynamics has robots that are flipping and whatever else. We don't need more of that. Maybe the military will want that. The DoD will want a robot that can scale terrain and crawl across a landmine field and whatnot. That's the last thing I want in my house. What I really want is, I have 16 and a half-foot ceilings. I'd love a robot to clean those windows without me having to get on a ladder, right? Those are the kinds of things that really accelerate my productivity. Is doing those mundane things, and a Roomba is great, but a Roomba with appendages is even better. And so I really like this concept of us extending into the world of robots doing the things that we know they can do really well. And this one again is still stuck on a single floor without an elevator, and since my house doesn't have an elevator, it can't clean windows upstairs or downstairs because it's stuck on one particular floor without you moving them. That will be kind of, for me, the next really interesting piece, which is, can it ambulate stairs or be moved from one floor to another without me having to move it, so that it can actually clean the whole house, clean surfaces, clean windows, even clean walls, I suppose, so that I can not have to do that stuff. And I think that can be really, really useful. All right, on to our next story.
Before we go to
go
that,
ahead.
It is, if you have not tested, or our listeners haven't tested, the Roomba or the equivalents. Now there are many options. Roomba were the first brand who came with this. Do the Roomba vacuum better than what I do? No. Do they do a better job than what I do? No. But do a job a lot more often than what I'm willing to do it. And that's where it wins. And I think it is the same thing in this case, in the same thing with this robot. It's going to do the great job to eliminate the human? Maybe not. But it's going to be able to, you will be able to send this thing so many times that eventually the job is going to be good enough.
Right, consistency is really the goal here, and consistency. The little bits of cleaning consistently is what keeps a house clean. And these kind of grand gestures of, we're going to clean the whole house today, kind of ideas really ultimately break down, because it takes a lot of energy. It's all very concentrated, and people tend not to keep those up. And so I like to break my cleaning into these small little bits, and it would be even better if it was done by a robot. So I'm excited to have this kind of thing, between the cleaners and the little bits of cleaning that I do throughout the week, and having a robot, like the Roomba and other devices as they come online and are available on a consumer level. I think this is really good for people. It helps us save time on things that we really don't need to be spending our time on. And there are things like, there are like mindfulness practices around, say, washing dishes and other kinds of things. I totally get that. If you want to, like, if you de-stress by cleaning windows, go for it. You keep it up. But for the rest of us who do not want to do that, then we have an out, right? And I have other ways of de-stressing and other mindfulness practices that I'd like to engage in. So I don't think there's any right answer or response there. Bless you. But the goal is to really figure out what's right for you and what's the time you want to spend on things in your world, and then find automation to be able to figure out those pieces. But this physical automation function, I think, is a real important aspect of how humans will develop, because as much as AI and machine learning within the context of AI is important, I think the physical robotics is also as important for us being able to, like, at some point in the future, will I be when I'm old and gray? Well, I'm already gray, but when I'm older, when I'm older and infirm, is it going to be a robot that cares for me? And is that appropriate for the type of human that I am, wanting a human potentially to care for me, or a human-like robot to take care of me, as opposed to a robot that looks like the one in the alphabet article, right? So these are questions that we all need to think about, because our productive lives are built upon the expectations we have about our world, right, and how we should live our lives. And so I'm just really excited about all of the things that we are seeing in our lifetimes come to be, and we'll see what happens. All right, on to our next story.
You could get a Model 101 from Skynet to take care of you. I don't know. So since you did make me quote the other movie, I'm going to quote, this is from Terminator. So you may get one that says "Hasta la vista, baby." I don't know. But our next news is Spotify acquires Finaway. That is the largest audiobook wholesaler, basically the wholesaler who works with Script, Nook Audiobooks, Kobo, Storytel, and Google Audiobooks. So anybody, but Audible. And I think that was good. I don't necessarily love Spotify, but I think need somebody bold to really compete with what Amazon has been doing with Audible. And I'm a big believer in competition. Competition makes everybody better. And if we get somebody who's willing to really push aggressively, and Spotify may not agree with everything they do, but they push aggressively for what they want. If they really push audiobooks aggressively this way, it will be really, really good for the audiobooks.
Yeah, I have to say that I dislike Spotify in many different regards, and mostly because they're attempting to kill podcasting in the traditional RSS feed concept. So, I'm a big advocate for the freedom aspect of podcasts, or of really all media. We should be able to have, free speech in and on the internet as well as on the World Wide Web. And so Spotify's intentions there really do disturb me. But at the same time, I agree with you. I think that this is actually a really interesting, innovative move on behalf of Spotify. Amazon has a huge imprint, with the Audible brand, and they have ACX as well. So a lot of people are self-publishing their audiobooks through the Audible platform using ACX. And so having a competitor in the market, even if it's a duopoly as opposed to a monopoly, I think this is probably a good thing to have some competition in the market. I hope that they're not working behind the scenes now to work with Amazon to price gouge and to be able to set limits and those kinds of things, because we know that these large tech companies tend to talk to each other and they tend to cooperate in these ways. So I'm praising them now, but I'm not leaving closed the door, or I'm not closing the door on the fact that they may not down the road prove to be a poor steward of whatever competition is against Audible. So it is what it is. All right, we have one more story about Amazon Photos.
Oh, because I skip it. Amazon Photos got updated for iOS. So if you use Amazon Photos, they really finally updated. So you have now better navigation. You have, they put they improve the user interface finally and make it something pleasurable to use. So that way, what I'm guessing they're hoping is that you start putting more photos in there. The reality is that Amazon Photos has been behind Google Photos, and a lot of users prefer Google Photos. Are you going to move from Google Photos to Amazon? I don't know, but without any doubt, the interface and the improve of the interface at least will make you evaluate that.
Yeah, I think most people should be aware that if you have Amazon Prime, you have unlimited photo storage within Amazon Photos. And so that's a really nice place to at least back up your photos, even if you are within Google Photos. I like the idea of downloading my entire Google Photos database on occasion and then uploading the balance up to Amazon Photos. And so it's nice to have this update in the application. It looks really slick, and I hope that they bring this new updated version to Android sooner rather than later. And again, it's nice to be able to just in the navigation be able to seamlessly flow through the various images, to be able to filter based on people and faces and locations and so on and so forth. So just giving more navigation to those pieces in a more fluid way is just nice to see. And again, I think that it's good to have competition in the market, and it's good to have a refresh of these kinds of tools every so often, because that means that they're keeping up on security, they're keeping up on the user experience, all of those things. And it makes me remember that Amazon Photos, or at least gives me some heart that Amazon Photos is not going away, because as an Amazon Prime subscriber, I feel like it's a feature I am paying for, and so therefore I'm paying for that storage, and I don't want the app to go away. So I like the fact that it's hanging around. All right,
Yep.
With that, go ahead.
No, I just said yes.
Absolutely. So with that, we are moving right along from our articles to our productivity resources of the week. And so each week, Augusto and I bring you a productivity resource that we have come across in our productivity journeys that we think you might like. And so this week we have 2 resources, one each, and mine is actually going to be, I think, something fun, but I think that it can also be rather useful and productive for you if you so choose. This is a Google product. This is called Tab Maker, and what it allows you to do is to turn your basically create a tab extension that allows you to modify and create your own browser tab. So you get to customize your own browser tab. So if you go to the link in the show notes, you'll then be taken to this particular page. When you click Get Started, you can see here that you can actually create your own custom tab. So that gives you a bunch of templates. You choose the template that you like. It gives you the different sections that you can modify, and then you work your way through. And then when you're done, you basically have your own tab extension that you've created, which is really remarkable. It's a lot of fun, and there's all kinds of things that you can do with it to have your own kind of productivity dashboard right there within your Chrome browser. And presumably, since this is built on top of Chromium, just as Edge is, just as Vivaldi and Brave and others are, it's potential that you can actually port this extension over to the other browsers as well. So that's Tab Maker. I'm really curious to see. I haven't really played around with it too much, so I'd love to see how this kind of works out and what you can do really under the hood here. But it is the first step in being able to kind of play around with these various tools and giving you some power underneath the hood of something that you would otherwise leave to other people. So it gives you your own. It just enables you. It empowers you with your own tools. So I like that. I like the ability to you can embed things and all kinds of other fun things. Anyway, Augusto, what's your tool this week?
So mine is a 3-in-1 universal cable. Recently I have somebody came to visit us, and we have iPhone, we have iPad, but this person had an Android. So we get in the car after doing some errands and stuff, and I need to charge my phone. And it's out of luck in my house. So, but I noticed that, and I said, okay, let me change the cable in the car. And I changed the cable in the car from this one that I'm recommending. This was one my phone on Amazon, but it has now the Apple iPhone micro USB and as well as USB-C, and is one cable. You just change the tip, but all the tips are gluing there. So now if somebody else come, they will be able to charge anything. What I did not expect out of that was that I was going to need to charge the battery. I have a vest that is heated, and the battery run out, and I was like, run out. Oh, but now I can charge it in the car because it's USB-C that charge much faster than any of the other options. So it has already proved to be useful for me, at least.
Fantastic. I will definitely be looking into that because I'm always in need of more cables and charging cables and all that other fun stuff. So wonderful. All right, those are our productivity resources of the week, and that now brings us along to our final story, our featured story of the week. And this week we're talking about Apple has now got on the right to repair bandwagon all of a sudden. Now it seems to be that it seems to be that there was some kind of settlement that was coming out with a shareholder lawsuit, and this was their way to preempt that whole outcome of the settlement, or there some kind of deadline or whatever. But either way, Apple has been lauded mostly in the media for the fact that they're bringing these self-service repair kits for people to be able to kind of quote unquote legally repair their own iPhones. Now, this is starting with which model of iPhone?
iPhone 12 and iPhone 13.
Which is a reminder to everybody. That means if you have an iPhone 6 or an iPhone 7, this is not for you. This is for those with the latest models, the last 2 models of iPhone. So iPhone 12 and iPhone 13.
And they said that available soon will be MacBooks with M1 chips. So if you are Intel, you are out of luck. And I'm guessing iPads with that. That said, I think it's good. I think it's good for many reasons. The people who is going to do it or has been doing it already, but they are not necessarily finding the good Apple hardware. They're finding something, okay, and that bring other series of problems. That said, I told to somebody, oh, then everybody will be able to fix their devices. Let's put a warning in there. Uh, I'm a slow learner, so very many years ago, I tried to fix a port on a MacBook Pro, and I make those two mistakes in there. Mistake number one was try to fix it. Mistake number two, that was my wife MacBook Pro. Okay, not a good idea, let me tell you. But since you don't learn and don't forget things, the iPad of my son, the screen was broken, so I decided I was going to do it myself, and cost me a new iPad because I was not successful. So when the next repair came, I decided walk into the Apple store, whatever they're charging is cheaper than the fee I need to charge for get the part plus the new device that apparently I need to buy after I try to fix them. That said, it is great because that will give maybe the opportunity to place like I fix it or you break it and all those to get the original parts, so you don't get the problems that, well, you get to now to the software upgrade and your screen is not working because you did not have the original, and that's a problem specifically that was happening on iPhone 12 and 13.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is really going to be interesting for the people who are in that secondary market are now capable of going ahead and repairing those devices, getting genuine parts, as you talked about, so you're not getting knockoff, cheaply made, tools and prices, parts. And I know that for myself, I tried to replace an iPhone screen with its digitizer way back in the day, bought the new screen and digitizer, and of course never was able to get the screen and digitizer to work because it was, so I had to throw it out, so it was a waste of money, bought another one and then it worked. Right. So, just you're going to get cheaper parts if you can't get them directly from Apple. That's always been nonsense, right? Like, why could I not ever go to Apple and just say, give me the part and I will go fix it? And this is I think the forward movement toward the overarching conversation around right to repair. And, in the EU, these laws have started to come online. And I think for all of us who are tech savvy enough, this is not for everyday people, but those of us who are tech savvy enough to want to put on a wrist wrap because you don't want to, put static charge into your electronics, and you have the appropriate tools. This now gives you the empowerment to go ahead and do that. But then there's this huge secondary market of people who will have those skills and will be able to do it in a legitimate way that they otherwise weren't able to do before. And I think that's really good. I think also Apple's kind of reading the writing on the wall, which is that it's going to be more difficult to get a lot of these supplies and a lot of these parts, and so they're buying back these parts, these original parts from those folks who do bring them in, and that's going to give them greater access to a lot of these parts over the long term. We're running out of precious metals on the planet, and we're not recycling them at a rate or fast enough to be able to keep up with supply and demand, or keep up with demand based on that supply. And so we need to have creative ways for dealing with this. And I give Apple credit for kind of getting ahead of this particular problem. And I hope to see other manufacturers now kind of compete with Apple in that way. And that will be good for the planet. It'll be good for consumers because we'll be able to get the continued electronics, that we want to, because we won't be sitting around thinking, oh, well, we can't mint any more, precious earth minerals. So we just can't have any new electronics until something else gets recycled. So I think this is a really good movement for all of us to remember that we have limited resources on the planet, and we need to be able to have some level of recycling of these technologies so that we can continue to use them. So I'm glad to see Apple do this, and we'll see how it works out for them. I think this is, again, on two latest model of their phones, and then it's going to move out to their other devices. But I think it's a good thing for us to start seeing the movement even there, right? They're just testing it here. We'll see more as it kind of scales out and becomes better and better. And I hope that other manufacturers, here's looking at you, Samsung, starts to get themselves up and running there. But with that, we have now covered all the stories that we were going to cover this week. And so we have covered the productivity related technology news for this week. Thanks to Augusto Pinaud for putting together the show this and every week. And we will see you all next week. All right. On anythingbutidle.com, you'll find our show notes with links to all the stories that we just discussed. They will have tools of the week also there in the productivity resources of the week section. And any extra stories that we didn't cover here during this episode will also be there on anythingbutidle.com/093. It also includes a text transcript, both a readable one, just click on read more, it'll expand and you'll see the transcript there, and also a downloadable one you can click the PDF download link on, and it'll go ahead and, download so you can take it offline. After reviewing the show notes and reviewing the episode, if you think we missed a story, feel free to leave a comment on the page, put a link to the article or any type of news that we missed. Feel free to tweet or DM us. We're at Anything But Idle on Twitter. You can also use our contact form on our website. So use any of those means to let us know if we missed something. We're always happy to learn about new and other sources of news in the productivity world. If you have a question or a comment about something that we discussed during the show, you can do the same. And you can also join us in Personal Productivity Club and discuss that with us there. And so we have a channel dedicated to Anything But Idle inside of Personal Productivity Club, which is the online community that we talked about earlier during the ad break. And so if you go to anythingbutidle.com/community, you will then find the group. It'll just automatically join the group inside of Personal Productivity Club. And so you can sign up and you can join us and you can discuss any of the news items that we discussed today during the show. If this is your first time watching the live stream, feel free to click the subscribe button. That helps us grow the channel, of course, but it also gets you notified when we go live weekly. If you're listening to the podcast, feel free to add us to your favorite podcast app and feel free to rate and review us inside of your podcast app of choice if it so allows. And we appreciate all the reviews and comments. All of that stuff is just really, really helpful. And so thank you for doing that. With that, we will see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life.